sunny, so it was all right. It was
And
good.
Four Seasons is beautiful
Yeah.
in Illinois.
Yeah, so we went downtown Chicago one of the afternoons and walked,
Oh, you
see the
went.
decorations and all of that.
Uh-huh.
Although they don't put as many Christmas decorations as when I was little, because now they have, they're trying to not offend Muslims or Jews or other, so they balance it out with other types of decorations.
Well, in Chicago, in
Yeah,
downtown Chicago, it must be.
downtown Chicago, in the windows of the stores on State Street, some of the main shopping areas.
Yeah. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is November 12th, and here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, so nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for coming with us to discuss the huge victory for Trump and Trump team and for our beautiful and bright future of this nation. Thank you
Right.
so much. Yeah. And Tom worked in FBI for 30 years and he worked as assistant director of FBI for 5 years and he's retired now. Again, thank you so much, Tom.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So tell me, what do you feel about the victory of Trump and Trump team? I know you're at Chicago at that time, on November 5th.
Right. I think the main thing for me is, when Trump says "Make America Great Again," as he has said 1,000 times during his rallies and other speeches and interviews.
Mhm.
But to me, what that means is that we have a number of institutions in this country that used to be great. And my institution, the FBI, was one of them that was considered the best in the world.
Mhm.
And around the time that James Comey became director, followed by Christopher Wray, it's really been a decline. So you not only have the decline of the country and the institutions of the country under Biden's lack of direction or misdirection, but then you have that individually in places like the Department of Justice with the FBI and some of the other institutions and places you never would have expected. In
Mhm.
fact, we just recently saw examples of an agency you would have never expected, FEMA. We have these horrible hurricanes
Mhm.
recently, and President Trump had visited some of the worst areas damaged by the hurricanes, and he heard from people there that, the FEMA is not helping us if we're in a Republican neighborhood or if we have a Trump sign in our yard, they skip right over us.
Mhm.
And the New York Times and all of the liberal media, Trump's a liar and he's wrong and that's terrible. Well, now it turns out he wasn't lying. It was absolutely the truth. He went to the actual areas, unlike our president. He went there and heard from the people that they were being neglected by the federal government, particularly FEMA, which is not supposed to be a politicized agency. Well, now it comes out this week, in the last couple of days, that a woman named Marnie Washington
Mhm.
at FEMA has been fired,
Yep.
and FEMA's administrator has put out a statement basically admitting what she had done and that she had issued orders to subordinates to skip over Trump properties. If a yard had a Trump sign, skip over it. Don't treat them. Don't help them. And suddenly, all these things where everybody calls Trump just a liar and outrageous, you don't hear one apology
Mhm.
when the truth comes out that Trump was absolutely right. And
That's
that when Trump said all those things, for the people that lived in that area, to me, that pretty much guaranteed that they were going to be on Trump's side. If they could vote for him, they were going to do that because nobody else was taking their side. Nobody else was saying they should be receiving the government services fair and unbiased and unpolitical, and and they weren't. And
Mhm.
they knew it, and then Trump knew it. And now we all know it. But interestingly, you don't hear the New York Times or see, you don't hear in a single apology.
they
Oh,
won't.
we were wrong. Trump was right. You're not going to hear it. They move on to the next thing to criticize Trump about.
Mhm. That's the problem of this country right now. No accountability. It's you
No,
just
exactly right.
want, and then there's no consequence. So that's why you see this kind of situation is going on and on until today. Trump will get out and then stop the whole ridiculous thing. So we have a huge victory. We win the Senate, we win the House, and then it's a big win for the American people. And then we see something happen in Senate. Mitch McConnell want to do something bad, and he want to pick up his person, his man to run the Senate. So they're gonna vote tomorrow, I heard. And also I heard that some people will stand out and push the vote to maybe January after Trump get into the White House. So what do you see from here? Is that gonna happen or maybe
Well,
not?
we're going to have to wait and see because, in my opinion, about Mitch McConnell, and
Mhm.
this is his last
Try.
swan song, if you will. He's out of power. He's not going to be the leader anymore. He's
Right.
going to be gone. But uh, during this time, going back to the first Trump administration, 2017 to till Biden was elected, McConnell was always a pain in the neck to Trump, other than he did help Trump get a lot of his judicial nominees confirmed to be federal judges and
Mhm.
then three Supreme Court justices, because that had to go through the Senate. It had to go through the Judiciary Committee for
Mhm.
review in the Senate, and then for the whole Senate to vote on those individuals. So that was one good thing. Another good thing that McConnell did that I think people just, if he did anything good in his entire career, is that he prevented what's his name, Merrick Garland, Attorney
Garland.
General. He prevented him from becoming a Supreme Court justice, where
Mhm.
he would sit 30 years on the Supreme Court. And
Mhm.
that's, Obama nominated him in the last year of his presidency, and McConnell just refused to assign it to the Judiciary Committee for hearings, and
Mhm.
therefore refused to let it go to the Senate floor for a vote. And so
Mhm.
he froze that nomination for almost the last year of the Obama presidency. And
Mhm.
thankfully he did, because we have seen now with the
Mhm.
Merrick Garland Attorney General regime under Biden how horrible he is,
Yep.
how he has unleashed lawfare,
Mhm.
have the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies that he had control of to go after conservatives, go after pro-lifers, go after anybody that supported Trump. And at least within it, as horrible as that is, at least he's not on the Supreme Court for 30 years.
That's true. That's true.
And not only that, but it enabled Trump to have an extra nominee. And a
Mhm.
lot of Democrats were critical because if you remember back toward the end of Obama's administration, people were trying to get Ruth Ginsburg to resign so that Obama could pick her replacement. And she refused.
Mhm.
So then she stays on and then dies when Trump's in power. So Trump gets to pick the selection for her. He got to pick the selection replacing Scalise
Mhm.
that Obama wanted to get Merrick Garland. So Trump would have only gotten maybe one selection, not three.
Mhm.
And that's an enormous contribution because they're still there making a difference. And we're going to see in the upcoming months how big of a difference they make when a lot of these cases go appeal to the Supreme Court, and they'll
Mhm.
be in a position to say yes or no to many of these uphold or overturn lower court decisions.
Mhm. So there are three, well, like you said, he did something good. So at least one thing, right?
One
Just
one redeeming thing. Now, one of the things he did that was bad,
Mhm.
and we're just learning more about this, and your audience and most people don't know
Mhm.
that when nominations are made to be on the Supreme Court or to be a cabinet member or a director of the FBI or some of these director of the CIA, when those nominations are made by the president, it usually, depending what their area of coverage is, it goes to a committee in the Senate. The Senate, the head of the Senate, which had been McConnell back then, and then recently Schumer, Democrat Schumer, assigns it to a committee. So if it's a judge or a law enforcement position, that position goes to the Judiciary Committee, and the committee then holds hearings.
Sure.
And during the hearings, at the end of a week or two or three of hearings, they vote. And they vote whether to send the nomination. Well, they send the nomination either way to the whole Senate with a recommendation to pass and select this person or reject the nominee. But either way, it's up to the Senate. And the
Mhm.
Senate doesn't always follow the recommendation of that committee, of whatever committee it is, but they're in a position to make the final decision of who gets confirmed and who doesn't. Now, the exception to that most people don't know is called I guess when the Senate is not in session, the
Mhm.
president can make a pick, select someone,
Mhm.
and avoid the nomination process. They just
Right.
go right in.
Right.
And McConnell set up a rule basically that said during the Trump presidency, first presidency, the Senate will never be out of session.
Just
President
in the
Trump could
choice.
never make an
Right.
absentee pick
Mhm.
that would be selected automatically. So
Right.
then it had to go to a committee, and they could stall and play around, and the Democrats on that committee could, make it be delayed.
Mhm.
Uh, Committees could be horrible. Like you remember the Supreme Court hearings for some of the Supreme Court picks,
Mhm.
accusing the selected person of raping somebody years ago when they were young, and the victim couldn't remember where or when or what happened, but knew it happened, that kind of thing. And so that was something that McConnell did. Now, Trump right now is trying to negotiate with the Senate
Mhm.
to not do that again.
Right.
And depending who the Senate picks, if they pick Rick Scott, who most of the Trump's people and most conservatives want Scott to be the
Mhm.
selection for head
Right.
of the Senate,
Right.
rather than the other two, Cornyn and Thune, because they're more rhinos. They're going to not side with Trump and Trump's people much of the time.
Right.
But if Trump is able to get that agreement
Mhm.
with the Senate, leadership of the Senate, then he'll be able to, when the Senate is not in session, he could make a selection, make a pick that could just automatically is confirmed.
It's much more
Without,
efficiency.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupt you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What you were going to say.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's more effective for Trump to do his job. So I
Right.
just
Oh, yeah.
wondered, yeah, what do you think about the chance for Scott to get picked? What do you think? We
I think
have,
it should be pretty good. I think he's pretty well respected in the Senate, his fellow senators, and some of the senators that are rhinos are not going to want him picked because he's going to do Trump's bidding, and they don't want that.
right,
Now,
right,
other people think philosophically, Trump won the election by a landslide. He should get his picks. He should
right.
have the head of the Senate
Mhm.
basically uh, supporting his, whatever proposals and selections and that type of thing. So I think that I think there'll be a lot going on behind the scenes this
Yeah,
week and
yeah,
tomorrow that we won't know about.
right.
But I think we'll see Trump pretty much come out victorious in what he wants to get accomplished.
Hmm. Exactly. And there is a name list leaked out from the internet and said in the Senate who want to vote Scott, who won't. And lots of people just call their senator, just argue them to vote Scott. These people are Trump supporter. Some people is just wonder, is the name list true or it's just a fake thing? What do you feel?
I don't know because there is fake news going out on the internet now.
Mhm.
For instance, you heard last week that Trump was going to select Pompeo uh, to be Secretary of State,
Right.
and Nikki Haley to be in a key position. And all the Trump people on the inside know that Trump's been saying for well over a year he will never pick them to be in his administration. That Pompeo in particular, Trump felt like they both stabbed him in the back. That
Hmm.
Nikki Haley, he had given her all the support in the world, helped her to become and selected her to be ambassador to the United Nations, and she basically, in Trump's mind, had promised not to go against him and then ran against him after all. And then
Right.
Pompeo, same thing. That Pompeo, Trump feels like he got stabbed in the back by Pompeo in a pretty public manner.
Hmm.
So those were two people that Trump, they were like selected by Trump to never be selected. They are
Hmm.
not going to be in his administration. And yet, some of the liberal media was putting out that they were on Trump's short list just to cause trouble in the Trump camp, with the Trump supporters. And it was a lie. Everybody that knew Trump and knew anything about it knew it was never going to happen.
Hmm. Exactly. And talking about the cabinet candidates pickup, what do you think about Mark Rubio? People are saying that Trump will pick him as a Secretary of the State. It
That's
isn't
the rumor. Yeah, that's the rumor. Now, one thing with Rubio is that, one thing about Trump,
Mhm.
people that it depends on the manner in which they opposed him.
Oh,
So years ago, people that, the 20 people that wanted to be president from the Republican Party, if they did, their campaigning and bidding fairly and honestly, and they had not made a promise to Trump that they would never go against them, in that case, Trump would be very forgiving
mhm.
and much like President Lincoln, appoint people that were rivals. Once
Right.
upon a time, had been rivals, and that's what something. The books were written by historians. Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote a book about Abraham Lincoln called Team of Rivals,
Right.
because
Right.
many of the people that opposed Lincoln before he got nominated and elected, he appointed to
Mhm.
key positions in the cabinet.
Mhm.
And normally that would not happen. So
Mhm.
that's, kind of the situation here where they're saying that, Trump basically, people that have opposed him strenuously, he's forgiven in many cases,
Mhm.
unless they promised him that they weren't going to do that
And then,
or
yeah.
made some other commitment to Trump to avoid doing that. So I think that that's kind of what happens here. The people that oppose Trump originally, they can come around, change their mind, and he'll accept that. But if
Mhm.
they backstab him,
Mhm.
that's a different story. He's not going to, if he mistrusted them in the first place, he's not going to make that mistake twice.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a good point. Good
Now,
point.
one of the things of concern with the selections, if Trump picks Marco Rubio,
Mhm.
Republican senator from Florida, well, the
Mhm.
governor of Florida, DeSantis, is a Republican.
Mhm.
So he'll pick the person that finishes the term of Marco Rubio, whatever number of years remains for Marco Rubio, a replacement will go into that job. Well, DeSantis is going to pick a loyal Republican for that position.
Right.
Some of the people in the House, President Trump talking about Stefanik, member of Congress from New York.
Mhm.
Well, if she joins the administration in some capacity and
Right.
resigns her position as a congresswoman from New York,
Right.
her replacement's going to be picked by, the Democratic
Yeah,
governor of New York. So that
exactly.
so literally the House will lose one Republican congressperson
Right.
replaced by a Democrat. So that'll change the numbers, and it's very, very close.
Right.
So people are talking about that. Trump is trying to, you know, talk it over, let's say, with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who he endorsed, completely to remain Speaker of the House. But Johnson's going to be nervous if
Right.
Trump starts pulling out members of Congress to
Right.
be in cabinet positions where they're in a district that the replacement's going to be a Democrat and
That,
they're going to lose a seat. So if
yeah.
they're ahead by 4 seats or 5 seats, that
Mhm.
could quickly go down to one or two and make the House very weak again.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how many of those actually go through.
Mhm.
If he picks a
It's so
Republican senator, or even a Republican member of Congress, from
Mhm.
a state like Florida, then
Mhm.
that's fine. That governor will pick a Republican replacement. But if that person comes from New York,
Yep.
it's going to be a Democrat go
For
into that spot.
California. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for pointing it out because in Congress we're not have too many to pick.
Right.
So we only have four, right? Four
I
seats.
think I think they're +4 right now. But
Okay. Not yet. In California, we have to wait until December. Can you believe that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So talking about the border czar, we have Tom Homan. He's a strong guy. He is a character. What do you think about him? He has speak about his policy and what he will do to the illegal immigrants. So what do you think he will finish his job or this is a huge difficulty in
No,
front of
he will do the job, and he will restore the border to what it was during Trump's first presidency. And I think that one thing about Homan
him?
is that he says what he believes. He's very Trump-like in that sense. And if it offends people, too bad. So, talking about some of the governors, let's say the governor of Massachusetts, she's already said if ICE, or one of the immigration agencies like ICE, if they come along and try to remove people in her state to get deported, she's going to fight that. I'm going to fight for my people. Well, they're not your people. What an idiot. Not her people. They're not citizens. They're
No.
here. They broke the law. They're
Mhm.
illegals.
Mhm.
And Homan has already said he's going to do what he has to do, and he doesn't care what governors like that say. So, so I think that that's a huge plus to have somebody so committed to his mission, which he's talked about, interestingly, since the first Trump presidency, all during the 4 years of Biden, he's been an outspoken critic of what's
Yeah.
gone on at the border and the lack of enforcement. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are breaking the law by not enforcing the border laws. Um, so, when the woman, the governor of Massachusetts, opens her mouth, Holman looks at that like, who are you? Who are you to tell us that we're not going to do our job?
Mhm.
And I think he basically bluntly said, stay out of our way.
Yeah.
So that'll be very interesting to see him in action
Mhm.
because he's got, again, this was one of the key issues that the public wanted. They wanted the border closed, and Holman is the key guy to do it. Now, in Holman's case, it's not a technical cabinet position. Borders are. It's like an artificial position.
Mhm.
Kamala Harris was supposed to be the border czar picked by Biden. She never did anything to help the border or bring control to the border. So therefore, it's not a cabinet position. He doesn't have to go through confirmation. So he'll have, more or less an umbrella control over ICE and the other border law enforcement agencies. And that's interesting there is that the people that want the border secured love Homan, and the actual agencies themselves, Border Protection, ICE, the other ones, they want him. They support him 100%, and they supported Trump almost unanimously to be president. So
Mhm.
this is a topic that if these governors think they're going to obstruct Homan, I think they're going to get a lesson in power politics pretty quick.
Mhm. So this is Holman that I think people love him. He
I
just
think so.
yeah, he just speak out what he thought, what he's right, and he speak out what he gonna do, no matter the governors on how the governors gonna stop him, try
Right.
to stop him. And he also mentioned that he actually got thousands of calls from the employees before work in the Homeland Security and like to volunteer to join his team
Right.
to do the job. So this is really touching. And it remind me, what do you think? What do you talk with me last time? And the question I asked you is if FBI need reform and they ask you to go back to FBI, will you go back to work, you said yes, right?
Well, yeah, I said if the president asked me to do something that would help the United States, to help the government, to help the whole administration,
Right,
I wouldn't hesitate.
right.
I would
Yeah.
do it. I would do it. Even though I'm old and feeble now
No,
and
you're not. You're not.
can't do that. But yes, if I was asked, absolutely, in a heartbeat. Now, as
Right.
far as reforming the Department of Justice and therefore the FBI,
Mhm.
that's a monumental task because the Department of Justice has so many liberal, left-wing, progressive lawyers that are supposed to be prosecuting and don't, under the leadership or lack thereof of Merrick Garland. Well, he was a leader. He led them right down the drain, DOJ,
Mhm.
to lose their reputation as little as they may have had. But in
Mhm.
terms of the FBI, the damage done by Comey and then increased damage under Christopher Wray is just without question. I will not be surprised if Wray is the first. In fact, you hear that Wray is going to resign
Yeah.
or
He,
step down. But he knows he's trying to avoid the humiliation of Trump publicly humiliating him by
mhm.
firing him.
Mhm.
And either way, Trump has already made no secret of his opinion of what Christopher Wray has done to the FBI and what the FBI has done to many, many law-abiding citizens
Mhm.
from Trump on down. If
Mhm.
people that support pro-life or other key policy issues,
Mhm.
the FBI has gone after them.
Mhm.
And the Richmond church memo that said that Catholics that go to church,
Mhm.
where the church still
Yeah.
holds mass in Latin, that they must be traitors, they must be domestic terrorists. That's unbelievable.
Mhm.
A lot of that, um, the
It's
Latin, for
great,
instance,
right?
when I was a little boy and I went to Catholic school my first 4 years,
Mhm.
and we went to mass every day. It was in Latin. Then, around the middle of the 1960s, you had a Vatican councils that convinced the Pope that in order to get more people worldwide to join the Catholic Church, they should allow the churches all over the world, if they want to, hold Mass in the native language of that country. So
Mhm.
all the Latin American countries could do Mass in Spanish or
Mhm.
Portuguese or Chinese or whatever language that
Mhm.
country had as their main language, even English in the United States, for instance, then they
Mhm.
should be allowed in that church to hold masses, some in Latin, some in the other language. And a lot of older people,
Mhm.
especially, that were so used to hearing the Latin, because Latin, Latin spoken or read in church, it's kind of a beautiful language, even
Mhm.
though you don't know a word they're saying, and
But the sound is beautiful,
it
right?
sounds beautiful. Some of the stuff they're saying is silly, but it's beautiful.
Mhm.
And so that's what they did. They allowed English to be, and that doesn't sound as beautiful in English,
Mhm.
but at least people understood the language, understood what they were saying, what would be supported, what would be a sin, that type of thing. And I think that, to have a church like Richmond put out a memo saying it's okay to do some of our masses in Latin, maybe if it's only one or two a week, that older people would want to go and hear it like they heard it when they were a child.
Mhm.
And suddenly you have the FBI referring to them as they must be domestic terrorists. And then Christopher Wray, and I've spoken on other podcasts about this, Christopher Wray lied when he testified about this in Congress. And the reason I said that is Christopher Wray said immediately, I'm disgusted. We can't allow this. I'm going to appoint investigators to go to Richmond and look into this and find out who put this out, who wrote this memo, who published it, and hold them accountable. Well, that's back in like February or, like more than a year ago. Then
Mhm.
during the summer last year, he's testifying before Jim Jordan in Congress, like 3, 4 months later. And Jordan says, okay, you're investigating this. How long is this going to take? to figure out who did what, who did the wrong stuff.
Just don't
And
want to do
he said we should know by Labor Day. So this is the first accusations start in February.
it. Hmm.
The hearing in Congress is in June, and
Hmm.
Ray says Labor Day. So that would be like 9 months into the investigation of this. And so I said on other podcasts, I'll repeat it here. I had been an inspector. One of my years in the Bureau, in the promotional process to get up to executive, you do a term on the inspection staff. You investigate every office, every division gets inspected every 3 years for efficiency and that they're doing the right thing. And the inspection also can be accusations of wrongdoing
Hmm.
against employees, executives, or otherwise. And I did several of those. And something as much outrage as Christopher Wray said he felt over this, in my day, the inspection team, me as an inspector, and several assistant inspectors, three, four, five, or more, would go to Richmond and interview every person at every level that might have anything to do with that
Hmm.
investigation, and then make recommendations at the end of it, whether it should be discipline, firing, whatever, time off, suspension. And that entire investigation, start to finish, would be a week or two, a couple of weeks. And
So,
I said, when Ray testifies 3, 4 months later, oh, we might know by Labor Day, he's lying. He's a liar. That doesn't take that long. And he's in a situation, assistant directors and other executives are in a situation where they can, if they think it's going to take longer, like if this is a more widespread conspiracy, they could send 20 agents
right,
to
right.
Richmond to investigate. They could send 5, 10, 20, 100. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter, to
Hmm.
get to the bottom of that as quickly as possible and determine what to do about it. So for Ray to say ultimately that it's going to, and I'll be sure to tell you when we finish, which ultimately would have been 9 months.
Never
Do you
happened.
recall ever hearing a word out of Christopher Wray, what they found in that internal investigation? No,
Hmm.
no. It just, Congress got on busy with other things. They just forget about it. That's typical of a Christopher Wray example. Then, in terms of actual investigations, oh, that's a pending investigation. I can't talk about that. He was giving examples of that for cases that were going on for 2, 3, 4 years. Hunter Biden's laptop, cases like that. Those
Hmm.
cases don't take 2, 3, 4 years. They're you can make them happen quicker. And something as sensitive as that, you can do it much quicker. So when Ray talked about the timeline for
Hmm.
getting results of an internal investigation, how many months it's going to take, or maybe up to a year or multiple years, or it's pending, we can't talk about it. That's not just a mistake or misspoken. He's lying. He knows damn well that that shouldn't take that long. And anybody that's ever been an inspector in the FBI, like I had been along my career path, would know. And friends of mine, colleagues from my day in the FBI, we talked about this. People that were assistant directors or in executive positions where they got assigned to run these kind of investigations, we all discussed it and said, he's just a liar, a flat out liar. And he's ruined the reputation of the FBI being number one in the world and having 70% of the American people respect it. He ruined that. He just ruined that whole scenario.
So the question is, Tom, and even if he quit, I mean, Christopher Wray, he said he's going to quit pretty soon, before on next year. On Can we still hold him accountable, or he will he quit and everything is just gone? We have nothing to do with him, even though he had done so many bad things to FBI.
Well, the
So,
different lies that he's told and everything, he could be held accountable for all of that. I think I think the tradition so far has been, including with Trump, to just get over it and move on. He did that with Hillary. The Trump rallies in 2016, the people, not Trump, the people in the rally started chanting, lock her up, lock her up. Now, when the election was over, Trump just let her go. She committed serious crimes, obstruction of justice and other things. And Nothing happened to her. And then, like a monster in some of these movies, she rears her ugly head, during the campaign recently, this presidency. It starts in with the things that she talks about. And you look at that and go, God, he should have prosecuted her for obstruction of justice,
Right.
destroying evidence when she destroyed her things. And a serious violation when she set up those servers in her basement. That's illegal.
Right.
When you're conducting business for the government, the law says it will be
Mhm.
recorded and retrievable later so that the public knows what the government did. And when she destroyed all of those emails and the devices and hammered her Blackberries and everything she did, that's serious. That's a serious crime, violating the law that says public official business will be kept forever and
Mhm.
retrievable.
Mhm. So let me ask you a question, Tom. If you were Trump, will you let Hillary just go? Don't charge her. Will you do the same thing as Trump do or Trump did?
No,
You will
now
hold
I'm a law and order person by career,
him.
and certain laws. The reason we have law enforcement is
Mhm.
that if you break a particular law,
Mhm.
you've got to send a message you got to hold the person accountable, whether it means they get prosecuted, whether they get fined, whether they go to jail,
Mhm.
whatever. But go after it and expose all those facts that came out.
Mhm.
And, by not doing anything and giving her a pass, none of that information became public for the public to really know. And then here she is, coming out in public now with all the statements she's made about Trump and how terrible he is and fascist and Hitler and all of that. That should have been put to rest in 2017 when he became president, and it wasn't.
Mhm.
So,
So
one
you.
of the reasons they have the Presidential Records Act, for example,
Mhm.
way back during the Reagan administration, you had Colonel Oliver North that was very popular with the public. And North enters into a deal with Iran where he's going to secretly sell them weapons and they're going to supply money because Congress refused to fund the so-called Contras in
Mhm.
Central America to go
Mhm.
against, the communist regime. They said, no, 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 we're not going to give money for that. So
Mhm.
Ali North goes to Iran and says, makes a deal with them. So they provide money. So it goes outside of Congress to provide that money to the Contras. Contra meaning Spanish word for against. They're contrary to the communist government that's ongoing there. So anyway, Ali North makes these deals and then he goes under investigation. And he, with his Blackberries and his computer in his office and all that, he deletes everything. He thinks, I'm all set. Well, the federal government computers are designed that you're supposed to do all official business on the official computer, and it goes into the server forever. You can't delete it. Ollie North found out the hard way when all of a sudden all the emails that he had become public because they were in there forever.
Mhm.
So Hillary, taking a note of that, decides, well, you know what? I'm going to do federal business offline. I'm not going to be in the federal system. So when she becomes Secretary of State, she has the computer people, IT people at State Department set up the computer in her basement in New York, in her personal residence.
Mhm.
And therefore, it's not going to be in the system, the federal government system. And
Mhm.
so therefore, she thinks if it's in her residence and under her control, she can conduct any business she wants. And at the time, she was conducting extensive business on behalf of the Clinton Foundation,
Mhm.
taking in tens of millions of dollars um, for the foundation, with the idea that if they subpoena her records, she's never going to provide that
Mhm.
evidence of her corruption.
Mhm.
And she didn't. So by deleting those computers and destroying the handheld devices, um, she avoided it. So she obstructed justice by getting rid of the evidence that showed her corruption.
Mhm.
And in those days, the Hillary Clinton or the Clinton Foundation, mainly managed by her, uh, was worth more than $100 million. It was worth a fortune. So anyway, excuse me one second. So anyway, she basically destroyed evidence of her wrongdoing and of the foundation's wrongdoing. Now, her claim and Bill Clinton's claim was that what they are doing is good. Good. They're collecting money. They're going to eliminate malaria in Africa and you name it, all these hunger in Haiti and all of that was all a lie. They were pocketing that money and living large, traveling around the world, first class hotels, all of that happening from the funding that they were collecting. And they were collecting money from governments like Australia and others because, oh, they're doing so much good, and from cartels and bad guys. They were money from everybody. And, they thought that they could hide that by not being in the government computer system. And they were right. She was absolutely right. So that was the serious felony she should have been prosecuted for,
Mhm.
was violating the Government Records Act so that the records of her administration running State Department could, be used for the future, just for knowledge. Now, one of the reasons the Records Act exists isn't just to be able to prosecute people. It exists so that when the next election or the next appointment, when that person comes into that job, they could review all of the previous acts of
Mhm.
that department, whether it's the State Department or Health and Human Services or Homeland Security, whatever it is, that they're able to see exactly what had happened before they took that office. Now,
Mhm.
with Hillary, she basically says the Secretary of State, the State Department business dealing with the foreign countries all around the world is her personal business, not ours, not the
Exactly.
people. And to get away with that, again, she got away with it. And I think, for Trump, he's trying to, hopefully he's looking at it, okay, I'm not going to come after you. You're going to get a reprieve, accept it and be happy and don't come back on me. And then she does.
Yeah.
She does. So I think that she got away with all of that. I think, you know, it's a shame. Now, did Trump learn a lesson with putting up with people that have done these
Mhm.
uh, evil things in the name of the government? I don't know. I hope so.
Mm. Because I think this is not something between people, between Trump and Hillary. It's between the people and the law.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so this is not a personal issue. This is a legal issue.
Right.
So hopefully, Trump learned something, or at least learn one lesson from Hillary Clinton, from just give her away, just let her be herself. And then I don't think Trump expect her back to him and bite him so badly. Well, these guys won't change because they are like bad people. Bad
Exactly.
always do the bad thing.
And his reward for his generosity and you know, let's all get together, let's all get along, let's have unity. His reward for that was then the Democratic Party went after him for
Yeah,
every minute of his presidency and every minute of his post-presidency out of fear that he might come back. So all of these prosecutions, all of these things that have gone on against him, his family, his sons, daughters, um, you name it,
horrible.
is horrible. And it's been horrible. And again, I think Trump by personality is a very forgiving person,
Right.
but by
Yeah,
forgiving them, he's enabling them to be powerful
yeah,
longer
yeah.
and do
I,
their evil longer.
I agree. I agree. So, Trump pick up two person. One is Stephen Miller. One is Michael Waltz. What do you think about these two people? Are they very qualified for their job? What do you
Yes,
think?
very, very qualified.
Uh-huh. So people doesn't know Michael Waltz a lot. So do you know him? Not personally, but his background and what he's good at.
I
Can you?
don't know a lot about him, but I think how he's gotten recommended and who's recommended him is much different than what happened in 2016 and 2017. So I think this time Trump is making the right selections and avoiding making bad selections.
Mhm,
And that's a big difference. You've seen, especially Miller on
mhm,
TV a lot doing interviews about different policies and issues. And his interviews were always outstanding. He's very articulate, knowledgeable, and persuasive. And I think he's a great pick. I know less about Waltz, but I
mhm.
think that he's probably also a very good pick.
Good, good. And also, we just heard that Trump pick Mike is a uh, former governor of Arkansas to be ambassador
Oh,
in.
Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mike Huckabee, he should be a great pick for that. Now, Huckabee's background is he's actually a Christian reverend.
Oh.
So he had been a reverend before he ever ran for governor in Arkansas in the first place. But now he's very active in an association, the Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Mhm,
And you see the commercials on TV. They have the one woman that, she's showing elderly people that are starving to death. And, they're opening a care package that comes in with food and that type of thing. But he's very much involved in that organization of supporting pay money and food and other contributions going to Israel to help people like that, the elderly population there, and not just Israel, but some of the other countries that have poor Jews that uh, survived since the Holocaust. And I think that the fact that he's so huge in that organization, and it's not just a Zionist pro-Jewish state or Christian, anti-Jewish, any of that. It's a combination of reverends and rabbis and other leaders in both religions to uh, to support poor Jews, feed them, clothe them, and help them survive. So I think that in that case, he's a pretty formidable candidate and a lot more qualified than most to get an ambassadorship that will be that sensitive.
well, that's very unique, and it sounds a good pick. And
Yeah, I
then,
think so.
yeah, that's good. That's good. And then talk about the election for this year. We see the red wave. You know, we expect a red wave on 2022, but we did not see it. But this
Right.
year, do you think it's a red wave?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely this time.
yeah, right.
I think that the evidence of it is that Trump is the first Republican in decades to win the popular vote.
Oh, yeah.
So he didn't just win the Electoral College. Now, most people, I think I talked about the Electoral College last week,
Mhm.
uh, and they don't understand the significance of it. What does it mean? And in 2016, Trump didn't either. Like, do we really need an electoral college? And it seems kind of a cumbersome system. And why do we have it? And again, I'll repeat, we have it because of the genius of our founding fathers. They knew even back when it was just 13 colonies and the first 13 states 250 years ago, that if you went strictly by popular vote, then the whole country would always be controlled by Boston, New York City, and
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Three cities would control the whole country
Mhm.
because they would have the most population. So
Mhm.
the idea was that they come up with a system where a state gets a number of electors decided by how many senators and how many members of Congress.
Mhm.
So they can have three electoral votes, or they could have, more than 20 or 30 like California. But the idea is that cumulatively, the states that are referred to by cynical
Mhm.
elitist, they refer to the middle of the country as flyover country.
Mhm.
Those states are insignificant. Who cares about Nebraska or Kansas or South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho? Those
Mhm.
states mean nothing. The only states that matter, East Coast to West Coast. And when you're going from East Coast to West Coast, you fly over the
Mhm.
insignificant part of the country. It's flyover country. It's meaningless. It's worthless. And so Trump, during 2016, he gets a lesson in why the Electoral College is so important because he gets the votes from flyover country and he doesn't win the popular election
Mhm.
because typically you would think it's close to impossible. The popular election now, you would have to win California, dominated by Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego. You'd
Mhm.
have to win New York, where you've got New York City and Buffalo area, or even Virginia has Norfolk and more populated areas, Illinois with Chicago, Pennsylvania with Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, Massachusetts with Boston. So those are the areas that would always dominate because
Mhm.
they have the most population and they're the most Democrat on top of it. So the idea there is Republicans would never win another election. Now
Mhm.
along comes candidate Trump, and he goes to the flyover countries. He's holding rallies, and the smart thing about that was even my dad was asking me, why is he holding rallies in South Dakota or North? Those people are going to vote for him, but he's not there for them. He's there so that the people in that state know who their congressmen are and Senate and governor, the candidates for the key positions in that state. And if he
Mhm.
can help them win, he'll be helping the Senate go Republican and the House go Republican. That's the main reason he's there. He's gonna get those votes
Mhm.
anyway. But for him to also win the popular vote, which happened hasn't happened for decades for a Republican, because he reduced the number of people that voted Democratic in those big cities, in
Yep.
those big states, and then still got flyover country
Mhm.
voting for him with
Mhm.
all the rallies and getting a number of senators and congressmen
Yep.
with his endorsement backing.
Right.
Good example of the power of Trump's endorsement. Back when J.D. Vance ran for the Senate in Ohio,
Mhm.
he was behind his
Mhm.
opponent. And
Mhm.
Trump rallied strongly. And in fact, here's another example of Trump's
Mhm.
forgiving. Vance, early in the campaign, was
Yeah.
against Trump. He
Yeah.
said bad things about Trump.
Right.
And then later, the more he learned about Trump, he realized and admitted he made a mistake. Trump's actually a good person, good candidate, good leader.
Mhm.
And so Trump campaigned very hard for Vance and got him elected to the Senate. And
Mhm.
now look at Vance, he's going to be vice president of the United States. And in picking Vance, he didn't pick a moron like Biden did with Kamala Harris. He picked someone who would be, if they do, God forbid, if they kill him during his presidency, Vance will be a phenomenal,
Mhm.
phenomenal president.
Right.
Very qualified, very articulate.
Mhm.
Um, So I think that, in fact, that might be enough incentive for them to not do it because Vance is probably stronger conservative even than Trump. He's liable to really, if they
Mhm.
if they make Vance president by killing Trump, I think they
Yep.
may really
Yep.
rue the day that they
Right.
did.
Right. Oh, this is ethical. It's ethical. So people just voice themselves by giving Trump votes, the popular votes.
Right.
So what do you think people's voice? When you read people's voice by a majority of the votes, what do you think people say? We need a change, or we need to go back to common sense. We need a better future. We need to make America great again. All of this.
All of that, yeah. I think what they were saying was that they're disgusted with with the lying of the Biden administration. Biden and Kamala Harris and Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, constantly saying everything's great. There's no real inflation. There's no real, stuff with jobs. Interesting, by the way, on the statistics that they use, the lying in the Biden administration. Every Friday morning, the statistics of the government are published.
Mhm.
Unemployment rate or the inflation rate, the economy. And they would post Biden's administration would post on Friday morning, we just added 1 million jobs to the economy. We just did this. We just did that on
All those
Friday morning.
numbers. Yeah.
And during the weekend, they came back and say, well, actually, we didn't add any jobs. That wasn't true. The inflation is 9%, not 2%. That isn't true. All the things they said on Friday that were lies, then when they think nobody's watching the news on the weekend, they rescind those statements. And because the actual stats come out that what they said wasn't true.
Mhm.
And I think that's typical of the Biden administration and Kamala Harris and all of that. Um, so
Yeah,
I think that really came back to haunt them that they
right.
put out so much false information about all these things.
So people are just tired of that. And we know that President Trump had made a lot of promise to American people. And from history, he is the one who promise made, promise kept. So
Yep.
for the next 4 years, he has a lot of promise to American people. Do you think still he can deliver his
Yeah,
promise?
I think even more so now than before, because before, right out of the gate,
Mhm,
judges were passing rules that said, no, you can't build a wall. He had to
mhm,
spend a year or two fighting that issue.
mhm,
Uh, Several issues that were very controversial, he was prevented in doing his policy for a long time. Then eventually he would win the case in court. Eventually it would go forward. Eventually he would get that. I
mhm,
think I think in the beginning right now, you're going to have some of the more, in my opinion, they're evil. Jamie Raskin in Congress, they're
mhm.
going to go after Trump. They're going to lie, cheat, steal, whatever they can do still,
Yeah.
even though the people have spoken. You know, the old expression used to be the people have spoken, and that's it.
Mhm.
Whoever won the election will get their supply, their policies in and all that. Well, now the Democrats, they don't believe in him. They're going to obstruct any policy that Trump puts out, no matter how much majority of the country wants it, whether it's the borders being closed or any of those issues, they're going to fight him like his governors in
Mhm.
Massachusetts. We're not going to help ICE. And I love Holman's response to that. Then get out of our way because we're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they don't listen to people, people will speak to them even louder. Yeah, to get them out of the House or the Senate.
All
This
right.
is what people can do. And I saw our audience and say hi to you, Tom. And then one of the audience said, really hope Tom can go back to FBI or CIA to do some work for Trump administration. Tom will do very, very good.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Like I said, if I was asked to do that, I would do it.
Sure.
But
If you do that, you'll come back to do the broadcast with me.
yes.
Good. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you for your insight and for your wisdom and for your information. And this is a very, very good start. We are looking for the next 4 years for this is a historical moment to change American and to change the world. And I remember on the election day, November 5th, we have thousands of people watch our live stream. We have did about 7 hours live stream, and people from all over the world. They're just leave their message. It's really touching me. They're from like Europe, like China, Hong Kong, Japan, and then Australia, New Zealand, you name it. And all they said is we're looking for in US. If you guys get success and we'll get success. If you guys fall, we'll fall. So this is a very big moment for America and for the world.
Yeah, I could tell you, just as an example, one of the presidential elections that we had back when I was in the FBI, and I traveled to Germany on business to do other things. But so I'm there on official business of the Bureau.
Mhm.
And I notice I go into these meetings, Germans are wearing black armbands because the
Uh,
presidential candidate that they were backing lost. And so, I said to them, why would you wear a black armband? You're German, you're not a US citizen. And the answer I got over and over was, this is from Germans, from other Europeans. He's our president too,
Yeah.
meaning that's how much they look to the U.S. for leadership in the world. And
Right.
they regard the U.S. president as a strong leader for them. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate God bless America. And this is huge.
Yeah. And I think that I've been to several because of my wife and Rebecca, our mutual friend, and others, several parties in the last week since the election, since I got back to Virginia, of celebrating the victory of Trump. And the organizations are mainly Chinese Americans for Trump.
Uh-huh.
And I met a large group of them in 2016 getting in line for a Trump campaign in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and
Uh-huh.
then going to several other rallies and running into them. They wore white T-shirts with Chinese Americans for Trump on the front. And they've only gotten stronger and stronger since then. And
Right.
so in their mind, and they did door knocking and poll watching and all those kind of things. And in their mind, they are right that they think they had a huge part of helping Trump get elected across all the lines. And especially Northern Virginia, it had been a very liberal Democratic area. And the fact that Trump did so well and came so close to taking Virginia
Right,
is a
right.
credit to all of these patriots who had
Mhm.
come from China in the last year, 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 to become citizens. And they are as patriotic as any American born American that I know,
Right, right.
including me. I was born in Chicago. So,
Thank you so much. And this is our big day. It is.
yeah,
And yeah. Well, thanks, Tom, again. Really appreciate it. And I'd like to see you next Tuesday. And by that time, I wish California has finished their counting and we know the final result. And
I'm not kidding.
yeah, we can discuss a little bit about the California, how the voting system is. I went to become observer for one day and I saw a lot. It's just
Good.
bad thing I experienced. We can talk about that.
Yeah, I'll interview you about that.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. All right. Thanks. And I'll do the Chinese version later today.
Okay. Thank you, Cheyenne.
Sure.
Great to see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Same here.